The sky above the mountain range turned dark as enormous shadows passed over the land. It was not clouds that blocked the sun, but wings. Wings so vast they seemed to stretch from one horizon to the other. The red dragon pack had arrived, their crimson scales glinting like fire in the fading light. They moved with purpose, their eyes sharp and full of fury. For centuries, they had waited for this moment, the day when they would return to Earth and claim what was rightfully theirs. At the head of the pack flew Hyejin, a dragoness whose reputation struck fear into even the bravest hearts. Her scales shimmered brighter than those of her companions, and her gaze carried an intensity that could pierce through steel. She led her warriors without hesitation, driven by memories of betrayal and loss. Long ago, but humans had hunted dragons to near extinction, slaughtering them for power and greed. Now it was time for retribution. Hyejin's mind burned with images of destruction, cities reduced to rubble, rivers running red with blood. But there was something else gnawing at her thoughts. A faint scent lingered in the air, unfamiliar yet strangely familiar. It tugged at her instincts, pulling her toward a place she hadn't planned to visit. Still, curiosity outweighed caution. She signaled to her pack to follow her as she descended toward the source of the strange sensation. Far below, nestled in a quiet clearing surrounded by towering trees, stood a small wooden cabin. Smoke curled lazily from its chimney, blending with the mist that clung to the forest floor. Inside lived Minsu, a man who preferred solitude to society. He had built the cabin himself years ago after leaving behind a life filled with noise and chaos. People often wondered why he chose such isolation, but Minsu didn't care about their opinions. Out here, he felt alive in ways he never had before. Minsu spent his days exploring the wilderness, learning its secrets and respecting its balance. One fateful morning, while wandering deeper into the woods than usual, he stumbled upon two tiny figures huddled together beneath a fallen tree branch. They were dragon hatchlings, no bigger than puppies, their fragile bodies trembling from cold and hunger. Without thinking twice, Minsu scooped them up and brought them home. Over the months, the hatchlings grew stronger under his care. He named them Ara and June, simple names that suited their playful personalities. Ara loved chasing butterflies, as while June enjoyed curling up beside the fireplace. To Minsu, they weren't just animals, they were family. He fed them, played with them, and even sang lullabies to help them sleep. Though he knew raising dragons was unusual, it felt natural to him. Perhaps it was fate that had led him to them. On this particular day, Minsu decided to take a nap outside. The weather was perfect, cool enough to be refreshing but warm enough to be comfortable. Stretching out on a patch of soft grass, he closed his eyes and let the sounds of nature lull him to sleep. Unbeknownst to him, Ara and June crept closer, seeking warmth. Within moments, they were snuggled against his chest, their rhythmic breathing matching his own. High above, Hyejin and her pack landed silently in the clearing. Their massive forms cast long shadows across the ground, but Minsu remained oblivious, lost in slumber. The dragons exchanged wary glances, unsure what to make of the scene before them. There, lying peacefully beneath the trees, was a human, and cradled in his arms were two young dragons. Hyejin stepped forward, her claws scraping against the earth. Her voice, deep and commanding, shattered the tranquility of the forest. "Human!" she bellowed. "Awaken!" Startled awake, Minsu blinked against the sunlight filtering through the leaves. When he saw the dragons towering over him, his heart skipped a beat. But instead of panic, a calm resolve settled over him. Slowly sitting up, careful not to disturb Ara and June, he met Hyejin's piercing gaze. "I see you found us," he said simply, his tone steady despite the overwhelming presence of the creatures around him. Hyejin narrowed her eyes, and suspicion etched into every line of her face. "Explain yourself," she demanded. Why do you have our young? Min-Su gestured gently toward the hatchlings. I found them months ago. They were weak and alone. I couldn't leave them to die. And you expect me to believe you cared for them out of kindness? Hyajin growled, her voice dripping with skepticism. Humans are selfish creatures. You destroy everything you touch. Min-Su shook his head, his expression sincere. Maybe some humans are like that, but not all of us. These little ones, they're special to me. I've done everything I can to keep them safe. For a moment, no one spoke. The only sounds were the rustling leaves and the occasional chirp of birds. Then, to everyone's surprise, Ara stretched her wings and yawned, blinking sleepily at the gathered dragons. Seeing her kin, as she chirped happily and wriggled free from Min-Su's chest. June followed suit, toddling toward the pack with unsteady steps. Hyejin watched as her children interacted with the larger dragons, their movements clumsy but joyful. Something inside her shifted, a flicker of doubt replacing the anger that had consumed her for so long. Could this human truly be different, or was he merely manipulating her emotions? We'll see if your words hold truth, Hyejin finally said, her tone softer but still guarded. For now, we stay. But know this, if you betray us, there will be no mercy. With that, she signaled for her pack to spread out and secure the area. Min-Su nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. As the dragons settled into the forest, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to change forever. Little did he know. Now, the bond he shared with Ara and June would soon become the key to bridging two worlds divided by hatred and mistrust. The forest was alive with tension as Hyejin and her pack settled into the clearing surrounding Min-Su's cabin. The air buzzed with restless energy, the dragon's wings occasionally rustling as they shifted uneasily. For creatures accustomed to dominance and fear, this situation felt foreign, almost unsettling. A human caring for dragon hatchlings. It defied everything they believed about their ancient enemies. Min-Su, on the other hand, remained calm despite the overwhelming presence of the massive beasts. He went about his usual routine, gathering firewood and preparing a simple meal. Ara and June stayed close to him, darting between his legs or perching on his shoulders as if to reassure him that everything would be fine. And their playful antics seemed to ease some of the tension, but not all of it. Hyejin kept her distance, observing silently from the shadows. She had stationed herself near the edge of the clearing, where she could watch both Min-Su and her children without being too obvious. Her tail flicked impatiently, and her sharp eyes missed nothing. Every movement, every sound was scrutinized. What kind of man was this? How could he have earned the trust of two young dragons so completely? Curiosity eventually got the better of her. Leaving her post, Hyejin approached Min-Su, her steps deliberate yet quiet. The ground trembled slightly under her weight, but Min-Su didn't flinch. Instead, he turned to face her, meeting her gaze with unwavering composure. You claim you've cared for my children, Hyejin began, her voice low and measured. Prove it. Min-Su nodded, understanding her skepticism. Without hesitation, he reached into a nearby basket and pulled out a bundle of dried herbs. When I first found them, they were starving and weak, he explained. I used these to make teas and poultices to help them heal. They needed warmth, food, and time to recover. He gestured toward Ara and June, who were now chasing each other in circles. They've grown stronger because of it. See how they move? How they play? Hyejin watched her hatchlings closely, noting their vitality and unbridled joy. There was no denying they were thriving, but still, doubt lingered in her mind. Humans were cunning, capable of deception. Was this all an elaborate trick? What do you want from us? Hyejin asked, her tone sharper this time. Why did you save them? Min-Su paused, as considering his answer carefully. I don't want anything, he said finally. I saved them because it was the right thing to do. When I saw them lying there, helpless and alone, I couldn't turn away. I may be human, but I'm not like the ones who hurt your kind. His words struck a chord within Hyejin, though she refused to show it. Memories of the past surged forward, images of flames consuming forests, of dragon cries echoing through smoke-filled skies. Her jaw tightened, and for a moment she thought about lashing out, ending this conversation before it went any further. But then Ara bounded over, her tiny wings flapping furiously as she leapt onto Minsu's shoulder. With a chirp of delight, she nuzzled against his cheek, her affection unmistakable. June followed suit, climbing up Minsu's leg and settling in his lap. Nay, the scene was almost absurd, a lone human surrounded by creatures that could crush him with ease, yet treating them with nothing but kindness. "Do you see?" Minsu asked softly, glancing at Hyejin. "They trust me, and I trust them." Hyejin exhaled sharply, torn between anger and confusion. This human was unlike anyone she'd ever encountered. His actions challenged everything she thought she knew about his species. Could it be possible that not all humans were monsters? Over the next few days, Hyejin and her pack continued to observe Minsu closely. They took turns patrolling the area, ensuring no threats approached, while also keeping an eye on the strange bond between the man and the hatchlings. Minsu, for his part, carried on as if nothing had changed. He cooked meals over the fire, tended to his garden, and then spent hours playing with Ara and June. Occasionally, he would sing soft melodies, his voice blending with the sounds of the forest. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light across the clearing, Minsu sat cross-legged on the ground, sketching pictures in the dirt with a stick. Ara and June lay curled up beside him, their eyes half closed in contentment. Hyejin watched from afar, her expression unreadable. "What are you doing?" she asked, suddenly startling him. Minsu looked up, surprised but not alarmed. "Just drawing," he replied, holding up the stick. "It helps me think." Hyejin stepped closer, peering down at the crude sketches. They depicted scenes of the forest, animals, and even the hatchlings themselves. One image showed Ara chasing butterflies, while another captured June lounging by the fire. And despite their simplicity, the drawings conveyed a sense of warmth and care. "These are our children," Hyejin murmured, her voice softer than before. "Yes," Minsu said with a small smile. "They inspire me. Watching them grow has been special." For the first time since arriving, Hyejin allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. She lowered herself to the ground, her massive form dwarfing Minsu's slender frame. "Tell me about yourself," she said abruptly. "Who are you, really?" Minsu hesitated, unsure where to begin. But something in Hyejin's tone told him she genuinely wanted to know. So he started speaking, sharing pieces of his life bit by bit. He told her about growing up in a bustling city, feeling suffocated by the noise and crowds. He spoke of joining a team of scientists studying mythical creatures, and only to leave after witnessing unethical experiments. And finally, he described finding solace in the mountains, building a life connected to nature rather than people. As he talked, Hyejin listened intently, her piercing gaze never leaving his face. By the end of his story, she realized she had underestimated him. Minsu wasn't just a random human. He was someone who valued life, who understood the importance of balance and respect. Perhaps, she thought, he truly was different. That night, as the stars twinkled above, Hyejin found herself reflecting on the day's events. The hatchlings were safe, happy even, thanks to this unlikely guardian. And Minsu, he was proving to be far more complex than she had anticipated. For the first time in centuries, she felt a flicker of hope, a fragile thread of possibility that maybe, just maybe, a peace between humans and dragons wasn't entirely out of reach. Days turned into weeks, and the uneasy truce between Min-Su and the Red Dragon Pack began to shift. The dragons, once wary and hostile, started to lower their guard. They watched as Min-Su continued his daily routine, caring for Ara and June with the same unwavering dedication he had shown since their arrival. Slowly but surely, even the most hardened members of the pack found themselves drawn to the quiet man who seemed so at ease in their presence. Hyejin still kept her distance, though not as rigidly as before. She spent hours observing Min-Su from afar, her sharp eyes missing nothing. She noticed how he always made sure the hatchlings were fed first, how he spoke to them in soft tones, and how they responded with chirps of delight. And it was clear that Ara and June adored him, and Hyejin couldn't deny that their bond was genuine. One morning, as the sun filtered through the trees, Min-Su decided to share a story with the dragons. He sat cross-legged on the grass, Ara and June nestled comfortably in his lap. The rest of the pack gathered around, their massive forms creating a circle of crimson and gold. Even Hyejin joined them, settling down with a grace that belied her size. Long ago, Min-Su began, his voice calm and steady. There was a boy who lived near a river. Every day he would go there to fish, but he never took more than he needed. One day, while walking along the bank, he found a wounded bird trapped in a net. Its feathers were tangled and it cried out in pain. Min-Su paused, glancing at Ara and June, who were listening intently. The boy freed the bird and cared for it until it was strong enough to fly again. When the time came for the bird to leave, it didn't forget the boy's kindness. From that day on, it returned every evening, bringing gifts of shiny stones and colorful feathers. Their bond grew stronger with each passing season, proving that trust can exist between even the most unlikely companions. When Min-Su finished, silence fell over the clearing. The dragons exchanged glances, some nodding thoughtfully, others ruffling their wings in contemplation. Hyejin studied Min-Su carefully, her expression unreadable. Though she said nothing, her posture softened slightly, as if she were beginning to understand something she had long refused to acknowledge. As the days passed, interactions between Min-Su and the pack became more frequent. Some of the younger dragons approached him cautiously, curious about the human who treated their kind with such respect. Min-Su welcomed them warmly, offering scraps of food or simply sitting quietly as they sniffed and prodded him with their snouts. Ara and June often acted as mediators, encouraging their kin to trust the man who had saved them. During one such encounter, a young dragon named Tai-hyun stepped forward hesitantly. His scales gleamed brightly, but his eyes betrayed uncertainty. Min-Su smiled gently and held out his hand, palm up. After a moment's hesitation, Tai-hyun lowered his head, allowing Min-Su to pat the smooth surface of his snout. A ripple of surprise spread through the pack. Tai-hyun was known for being skittish around humans, yet here he was accepting affection from one. Hyejin watched the exchange closely, her tail flicking back and forth. She couldn't ignore the growing connection between her pack and this solitary human. It was unnatural, unprecedented, but undeniable. Still, old wounds ran deep, and she struggled to reconcile her hatred for humanity with the evidence before her eyes. One evening, after the sun had set and the forest was bathed in moonlight, Hyejin sought out Min-Su. He was sitting by the fire, feeding small pieces of fruit to Ara and June. Hearing her approach, he looked up, meeting her gaze without fear. "Why do you do this?" Hyejin asked, her voice low but tinged with curiosity. "Why care for creatures that have only brought your kind suffering?" Min-Su considered her question for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "Not all creatures are the same," he replied, "just as not all humans are cruel. I see Ara and June as individuals, not symbols of what happened in the past. They're innocent, full of life and potential. How could I turn my back on them?" His words struck a chord within He-Jin, stirring emotions she had buried long ago. She thought of her own childhood, of hiding in caves to escape hunters, of losing friends and family to senseless violence. Hatred had fueled her for centuries, driving her to seek vengeance against those who had wronged her kind. But now, faced with Min-Su's compassion, she wondered if revenge was truly worth the cost. "I don't trust easily," He-Jin admitted, her tone softer than usual. "Humans have given me no reason to." "And yet here we are," Min-Su said with a faint smile. "You've seen how I treat Ara and June. You've seen how your pack is beginning to accept me. Trust isn't given, it's earned. Maybe someday you'll believe me." He-Jin didn't respond immediately. Instead, she lowered herself to the ground, her massive form casting a shadow over the fire. For a while they sat in silence, the crackling flames filling the space between them. Then, unexpectedly, Ara climbed onto He-Jin's back, chirping happily as she settled between her mother's wings. June followed suit, curling up beside Ara with a contented sigh. Min-Su chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Looks like they approve of our conversation." He-Jin glanced at her children, her stern expression melting into something akin to fondness. "They've always been stubborn," she muttered, though there was no real irritation in her voice. Despite her lingering doubts, He-Jin found herself spending more time with Min-Su. She began asking questions about his past, genuinely interested in understanding the man behind the calm exterior. In return, Min-Su shared stories of his life, painting a picture of someone who valued harmony and connection above all else. Through these conversations, He-Jin realized that Min-Su wasn't just different from other humans. He represented a possibility she hadn't dared to consider. But peace was fragile, and tensions still simmered beneath the surface. News arrived one afternoon that another faction of dragons, led by a ruthless commander named Dae-wook, was planning an attack on nearby human settlements. Rumors spread quickly, reaching He-Jin's ears through scouts sent to patrol the area. Dae-wook's faction viewed humans as nothing more than prey, unworthy of mercy. They believed He-Jin's decision to stay near Min-Su was a betrayal of their cause. And threats were issued, demanding that she join their crusade or face consequences. He-Jin called a meeting with her pack to discuss their next move. Opinions were divided. Some argued that joining Dae-wook was the only way to protect their kind, while others believed staying neutral was best. Min-Su listened quietly, sensing the gravity of the situation. He knew that whatever choice He-Jin made would have far-reaching consequences, not just for her pack, but for humanity as well. In the end, it was Ara and June who tipped the scales. During the heated debate, the two hatchlings instinctively positioned themselves between Min-Su and the arguing dragons, their small bodies trembling with determination. They gazed up at He-Jin, their eyes wide and pleading. Seeing her children choose loyalty to a human over their own kind forced He-Jin to confront her deepest fears and biases. She realized that bonds could transcend species, that trust and compassion weren't limited to bloodlines. With a heavy heart but newfound resolve, she made her decision. "We will not join Dae-wook," He-Jin declared, her voice firm despite the weight of her choice. "If he attacks, we will defend Min-Su and his people. This is our home now, and we will fight for it." The announcement sent shockwaves through the pack, but ultimately, they respected her leadership. He-Jin had chosen unity over division, hope over hatred. And though challenges lay ahead, she knew they stood a better chance together than apart. The forest was quiet, but the calm was deceptive. He-Jin's announcement had sent ripples through her pack, and though they respected her decision, not everyone agreed with it. Some dragons grumbled under their breath, muttering about betrayal and weakness. Others remained silent, unsure what to think. Tensions simmered beneath the surface, waiting for the right spark to ignite. Dae-wook's faction wasn't far away. Scouts reported that they were gathering forces in the nearby valleys, preparing for an assault on human settlements. Their leader was known for his brutality and ambition, traits that made him both feared and hated. To Dae-wook, humans were nothing more than pests to be exterminated, and anyone who stood in his way, human or dragon, was an enemy. Hae-jin knew time was running out. She called another meeting with her pack, this time including Min-soo. The air was thick with unease as the dragons gathered around the clearing. The Ara and June stayed close to Min-soo, sensing the tension in the atmosphere. Even the rustling leaves seemed quieter, as if nature itself was holding its breath. "We have a choice to make," Hae-jin began, her voice steady but heavy with emotion. "We can join Dae-wook and fight alongside him, reclaiming what we believe is ours, or we can stand with Min-soo and defend the humans. Either path will change our future forever." Her words hung in the air, sharp and unyielding. One by one, the dragons voiced their opinions. Some argued passionately for revenge, pointing to centuries of suffering at the hands of humanity. Others spoke of the possibility of peace, inspired by Min-soo's actions and the bond he shared with Ara and June. Min-soo listened quietly, understanding the weight of the decision before them. He didn't speak until Hae-jin turned to him, her golden eyes searching his face. "What do you think?" she asked, her tone softer than usual. "Do you believe we can win against Dae-wook?" Min-soo hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I don't know if we'll win," he admitted, "but I do know this. If we fight together, we stand a better chance than if we fight alone. You've seen how Ara and June trust me. They've shown us that bonds can transcend differences. If we work as one, maybe we can create something stronger than hate." His words resonated with some members of the pack, but others remained unconvinced. Among them was a veteran warrior named Jin Seok, his scarred scales gleaming in the firelight. He stepped forward, his deep voice cutting through the murmurs. "Forgive me, Hae-jin," Jin Seok said, bowing slightly. "But I cannot follow this path. Humans are our enemies. To protect them is to dishonor our ancestors." Hae-jin nodded, her expression unreadable. "I understand your feelings, Jin Seok. But remember this, vengeance only breeds more pain. We've carried the weight of hatred for centuries. Is it worth continuing down that road?" Jin Seok didn't answer. Instead, he spread his wings and took to the sky, disappearing into the night. A few others followed him, unwilling to abandon their old ways. Though their departure stung, Hae-jin refused to let it weaken her resolve. With the remaining members of her pack united behind her, Hae-jin outlined their plan. They would intercept Dae-wook's forces before they reached the human settlements, using the terrain to their advantage. Min-soo offered his knowledge of the area, pointing out hidden paths and strategic points where they could set up ambushes. His input surprised even himself. He had never imagined playing a role in a battle like this, but he couldn't stand idly by while innocent lives were threatened. The days leading up to the confrontation were tense. The dragons trained tirelessly, honing their skills and strengthening their coordination. Ara and June, now larger and more agile, practiced flying alongside the adults, their youthful energy bringing a sense of hope to the group. Min-soo spent hours preparing supplies, ensuring everyone had enough food and medicine to last through the conflict. Finally, the morning of the battle arrived. The sky was overcast, gray clouds casting long shadows across the land. Hae-jin led her pack toward the valley where Dae-wook's forces were assembling, and as they approached, the air grew thick with the scent of smoke and ash. Below, hundreds of crimson-scaled dragons roared and snarled, their eyes burning with bloodlust. Hae-jin signaled for her pack to descend into the valley, positioning themselves strategically among the rocks and trees. Min-soo stayed close to the rear, clutching a makeshift bow crafted from branches and string. Though he lacked combat experience, he was determined to contribute however he could. When Daewook spotted He-Jin's group, his fury erupted like a storm. "Traitor!" he bellowed, his voice echoing off the cliffs. "You dare side with those vermin? You shame us all!" He-Jin met his gaze without flinching. "This is no longer about pride or vengeance," she replied, her voice carrying authority. "It's about survival. If we continue down this path of destruction, we will lose everything, including ourselves." Daewook sneered, spreading his massive wings. "Then you leave me no choice. Attack!" The battle began with a deafening roar. Dragons clashed in midair, their claws slashing and tails whipping. Flames lit up the sky, turning the valley into a chaotic inferno. He-Jin fought fiercely, her movements precise and calculated. Beside her, Min-Soo aimed his arrows at key targets, picking off enemy scouts and disrupting their formations. Despite being outnumbered, He-Jin's pack held their ground. Their unity gave them strength, each member working seamlessly with the others. Ara and June darted between the combatants, distracting enemies and creating openings for their allies. Even Min-Soo found moments of courage, firing arrows with surprising accuracy and shouting encouragement to the dragons around him. As the fight dragged on, exhaustion began to take its toll. Both sides suffered losses, and the valley was littered with fallen scales and charred earth. Just when it seemed like the tide might turn against them, a loud screech pierced the air. Looking up, He-Jin saw Ara soaring high above the battlefield, her tiny form silhouetted against the clouds. With a cry of determination, she dove straight toward Daewook, her small body colliding with his massive frame. The impact startled Daewook, causing him to falter mid-flight. Seizing the opportunity, He-Jin launched herself at him, her claws glinting in the dim light. The two leaders clashed, their movements a blur of speed and power. Sparks flew as their scales scraped against each other, and neither willing to yield. Meanwhile, Min-Soo noticed a group of enemy dragons breaking away from the main battle, heading toward a nearby village. Without hesitation, he ran after them, shouting for backup. Several members of He-Jin's pack answered his call, intercepting the attackers before they could reach the settlement. Their timely intervention saved countless lives, though it came at great cost. Back in the valley, He-Jin and Daewook continued their duel. Each strike was fueled by centuries of anger and resentment, but He-Jin's resolve burned brighter. She thought of Ara and June, of Min-Soo and her pack, of the fragile hope they represented. With a final powerful blow, she knocked Daewook to the ground, pinning him beneath her claws. "It's over," she growled, her voice filled with both triumph and sorrow. "Stand down, or face extinction." Defeated, Daewook lowered his head, his rage replaced by resignation. His followers, seeing their leader subdued, retreated into the distance, their cries fading into silence. As the dust settled, He-Jin surveyed the battlefield. Her pack was battered but alive, their spirits unbroken. Min-Soo limped toward her, his face smeared with soot, but his eyes shining with relief. Together they looked out over the valley, knowing they had achieved something remarkable. Though the scars of war would linger, a new chapter had begun, one defined not by hatred, but by unity. And as Ara and June chirped happily beside them, it was clear that the bonds they had forged would endure, paving the way for a brighter future. The valley was quiet now, the echoes of battle fading into the stillness of the morning. As smoke curled lazily into the gray sky, mingling with the mist that clung to the ground. The air smelled of ash and earth, a reminder of the chaos that had unfolded just hours before. He-Jin stood atop a rocky outcrop, her crimson scales dulled by soot and dust. Her wings were folded tightly against her back, but her eyes remained sharp, scanning the horizon for any sign of movement. Min-Soo approached cautiously, his steps slow and deliberate. His clothes were torn, his hands scraped raw from gripping the makeshift bow, but he felt no pain, only relief. The battle was over, and though the cost had been high, They had won. Together. "Is it done?" Min-Soo asked, his voice soft but steady. Hye-jin nodded, lowering herself to the ground. "For now," she replied, her tone heavy with both exhaustion and resolve. "Daewoo's forces have scattered, and they won't return anytime soon." Min-Soo let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. He glanced around at the dragons who remained, those who had chosen loyalty to Hye-jin, and, in turn, to him. Their numbers were fewer than before, but their spirits were unbroken. They moved slowly, tending to wounds and comforting one another, their bond stronger than ever. Ara and June bounded toward them, their playful energy undiminished despite the ordeal. They chirped happily, nuzzling against both Min-Soo and Hye-jin, as if to remind them that life continued even after hardship. For a moment, the weight of everything they had endured seemed to lift, replaced by the simple joy of being alive. "We did it," Min-Soo said, smiling faintly as he patted Ara's head. "We actually did it." Hye-jin watched him, her expression unreadable. But there was something in her gaze, a flicker of gratitude, perhaps, or admiration. She had always believed humans were incapable of true compassion, yet here was Min-Soo, standing beside her after risking everything to protect not only his own kind, but hers as well. "Why did you stay?" Hye-jin asked suddenly, her voice low. "You could have run when the fighting began. No one would have blamed you." Min-Soo hesitated, considering her question. "I stayed because I believe in what we're trying to build," he said finally. "This isn't just about survival, it's about trust, about proving that two worlds can come together instead of tearing each other apart." His words lingered in the air, resonating with everyone present. Even the dragons, who had once viewed humans as enemies, found themselves nodding in agreement. And the Hatchlings' presence had been the first step. Now this battle marked another turning point, a chance to rewrite history. As the day wore on, the survivors began the long process of healing. Wounds were treated, fallen comrades mourned, and plans made for the future. Hye-jin called another meeting, this time inviting Min-Soo to speak alongside her. The clearing filled quickly, the dragons gathering close to listen. "This victory doesn't belong to me alone," Hye-jin began, addressing her pack. "It belongs to all of us, and to Min-Soo, who showed us that courage comes in many forms. Today we proved that unity is stronger than division, that hope can overcome hate." She paused, glancing at Min-Soo. "But our work isn't finished. Daewoo may be gone, but his beliefs live on. There will be others like him, eager to spread fear and destruction. Now, if we want a future where humans and dragons coexist peacefully, we must stand firm, not just as warriors, but as allies." Min-Soo stepped forward, his heart pounding. He wasn't used to speaking in front of such a large audience, but he knew his words mattered. "I don't pretend to understand everything about your world," he admitted, his voice carrying across the clearing. "But I do know this: fear creates walls, while trust builds bridges. We've taken the first steps toward building those bridges. Now it's up to us to keep going, to teach others that peace is possible." The dragons listened intently, their expressions thoughtful. Some exchanged glances while others nodded in agreement. Though skepticism still lingered in some hearts, the seeds of change had been planted. In the days that followed, Hye-jin and Min-Soo worked together to solidify their alliance. They sent messengers to nearby villages, explaining what had happened and offering protection in exchange for cooperation. At first, the humans were wary. News of dragon attacks had spread far and wide, but seeing Ara and June playing harmlessly near Min-Soo helped ease their fears. Slowly, trust began to grow. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Hye-jin and Min-Soo stood side by side on a hill overlooking the forest. Below them, the cabin sat nestled among the trees, its chimney releasing wisps of smoke into the cool night air. Ara and June chased fireflies, their laughter filling the silence. "What happens next?" Minsu asked, breaking the peaceful quiet. Hyejin tilted her head, or her golden eyes reflecting the fading light. "We rebuild," she said simply. "Not just our homes, but our relationships. It won't be easy. There will be challenges, misunderstandings, even moments when it feels like we're taking steps backward. But as long as we remember why we started this journey, we'll find a way forward." Minsu nodded, feeling a sense of purpose he hadn't known in years. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about creating something lasting, something meaningful, something worth fighting for. As the stars emerged one by one, twinkling brightly against the darkening sky, Hyejin lowered herself to the ground, allowing Minsu to sit beside her. For the first time in centuries, she felt a glimmer of hope, a fragile thread of possibility that stretched between her kind and his. It was delicate, yes, but also strong enough to hold. And so, under the watchful eyes of the hatchlings and surrounded by the beauty of the natural world, human and dragon sat together, united not by blood, but by choice. The road ahead would be long and uncertain, but they faced it together, guided by trust, compassion, and the belief that even the deepest divides could be bridged.